दिवि भूमौ तथाकाशे बहिरन्तश्च मे विभुः यो विभात्यवभासात्मा तस्मै सर्वात्मने नमः। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। After almost like 1 month gap, we are restarting the Yoga Vasistha Satsang, which every Tuesday we used to have at this time 4:30 to 6, and that was because of not doing well because of COVID. Thank God that we come out of it successfully, nicely, and still there is weakness and other things perceiving, but then I'm able to come back to the normal activity. So generally today I don't want to get into the details of technical aspects of Yoga Vasistha, but I thought one thing is, let me make it short because my stamina does not permit me to go by 1.5 hours. So this is one aspect of it. Second thing is that is the voice okay? I hope you're able to listen to me. Well, hopefully that you'll be able to, you are listening to the whole thing. 2-3 things I would like to touch upon on this Yoga Vasistha. As a very nice thing about Yoga Vasistha is that it's in the form of various stories, various characters that are brought about. I was also telling earlier on one occasion or several occasions, I said that the stories that are there in the Yoga Vasistha, sometimes they are from the previous Puranic times, and some of them are later to Ramayana period. So therefore, let me see how I can, I have given the full volume. Hopefully that should solve. Basically, the way that I would look at it is the way that the teaching of Vasistha to Rama were basically the ideas, what is the way that Rama should follow, take the instructions and then influence his personality, because he's on a very big mission, and that mission is basically to re-establish the whole yuga, and that's a big work that's going on. It's a God's work. That's why in Ramayana, that after this particular incident, Valmiki says, Kartavyam Daivamanikam. Hey Rama, that get up and then we are going on a Daivamanikam Kartavyam. So with that idea, that means to say, maybe that this whole scheme of things, that Rama has a large role to play, and for that this particular Yoga Vasistha is given. So basically the whole idea is to see that these qualities, these ideas that are given in Yoga Vasistha or Vasistha teachings to Rama are to shape his personality. Now, if there is any idea of anything that is there which does not touch our shape our personality, that's a different secular knowledge. We have two different types of knowledge. One is the knowledge that is connected with the world outside. You manage, you organize the world, and you have to do these kind of activities in the world outside so that you are in line with the growth and development that is taking place in the material world. Make the best use of it. We never rejected the material world. Actually, later on in Yoga Vasistha, we come to that idea also. He says that pravritti dharma, that means to say the world is supposed to be, we need to respect, we need to take care of it, and we have to be abreast with the way that the world is developing, technology or whatever it is, that this is one particular knowledge that we have. And the other knowledge is the knowledge about the individual personality. One is the knowledge about the matter, and the other is the knowledge about the self. And in the knowledge about the matter, even the body, intellect, etc., all these things are belonging to the matter outside, because these are the things through which that you interact with the world outside, material world outside. So these are the things which convey the material world to you. Your eyes see, your ears hear, your tongue get the taste of it. All those things are processed in your mind. And then intellect is the one which further analyzes all those things and then provides you the gist of what is supposed to be useful for you. So all that, whatever that is taken, is supposed to be the way that the world is, for we change the world to see that it suits you. So therefore all this technology development, all this world outside is one particular knowledge. But then there is another type of knowledge, the knowledge, and this knowledge that is there outside need not change you personally. You may be a great engineer, you may be a great scientist, you might have done the extraordinary research work and all those things, but deep inside that you may be having jealousy, anger, hatred, and depression, and more important thing is that you do not value the life outside in the world. Then what is the use of having all this knowledge? We have such people who have extraordinary, wonderful achievement in the world outside, but at the same time that they were not useful for the society, because the simple thing is that they were inside not grown up. Not only that, all the technology, they use it in the wrong ways. Like for example, we have here itself the example of in Ramayana, Ravana is there. He has done great tapasya, he has done great, extraordinary, wonderful achievement. And in fact, the way that the description goes on, the way that achievement of Ravana is somebody who is extraordinary. But in spite of all those things, look at what happened to him. Was he useful for our society? No, he was not useful, because basically that the inner growth, inner development that has taken place. So this is what, and this is also about the way that people do the kind of meditation to get all the different powers and siddhis and powers and all those things that are there. Wonderful that all those things you can achieve. But then if these things do not really bring you about the change in the personality so that mankind will be better by you, so then this is where we have these two aspects of it. One is called as the Daivi forces and the Asuri forces. Both of them are forces, so that you become part of the Asuri forces or the demonic forces, not the Daivi forces. So therefore, basically what we really require is the inner growth, inner development, to see that mankind will be benefited. You may not have all that kind of power that is there with the people, but then you have the peace within you. Once you have the peace within you, and that's what is the peace that you give to the world outside. And the peace and the ego does not go together. Power and ego goes together. Lot of times people think of doing all kinds of meditation practices, etc., or visiting temples, visiting gods and goddesses, all those things for the sake of powers. Very unfortunate it is about, because you have come to this field, very rare field. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Yatata Siddhayet. Once in a while somebody comes in this particular direction. But having come to this particular direction, what is that your focus is on? If your focus is on again the achievement of the things that are there outside, but then you can easily compromise that your character for the sake of that whatever that you would like to achieve in the world outside, you have not become a better human being. In fact, earlier it used to be in the form of powers, in the form of Akasha Gamana, etc., which people talk about it, flying in the air, flying in this and doing this, doing that, or walking on the water. These are all extraordinary, wonderful feats that one could achieve. There were yogis who claimed that. But in spite of all those things, that if the inside there is no development, then what happens is that he can compromise on the values of life for the sake of achieving these things. And that's what has been done by all these demons. Now, second thing is that earlier that used to be in the form of getting all these powers, but today the whole field of yoga is taken a direction of another way of direction, that that you accrue the ideas of more and more publications, more and more this thing, and all those research that you are doing. Now it is another direction that you are going, may not be in the form of power that is there in the world outside, but in the form of recognition in the world outside. And this recognition is also something which is one has to be very careful about, because this also recognition from where, if you look at it, recognition from the world outside. So therefore one has to be really very careful about all these things. If we can do that, if we can develop this aspect of it, understand this, then the inward journey starts. And now the whole of Yoga Vasistha is supposed to be giving us this message, that how that you can use all these things for the inward growth and development. Now all these stories that are there, in Indian culture there is another very interesting aspect about is that we always try to convey in the form of either anecdotes or the stories, or the way that they are models that you create, so that it is not the model that's important, it is not the characters of the story are important, and it is not the Puranic characters that are important. Don't look into that, historical, geographical, and these aspects of it. Try to go in such a way that what is the message that it communicates. Like for example, we have a sage like Vasistha, and then what is that the message that you get out of Vasistha? Don't try to look into the idea called Vasistha, when was he there, what was he there, what was he doing. All these things are unnecessary details about that. The same thing about Arjuna. Actually we have so far, last issue we covered about the Arjuna's idea, and Arjuna was supposed to much later than Krishna, Rama has come. So therefore the story is very important, whereas Arjuna came much later. But then this is how it is communicated. And not only that in our culture that we use the stories, but in the other cultures also they use the stories to convey the message. Like we have in the Western culture also, that there are so many stories that are there. And the stories like, all the other characters that are there in the stories in the Western world, all that is available. Like for example, Midas story that we think of it. And that really, was there any person like Midas? Was there any person like that he touches something, everything becomes gold? It may not be the reality, but then there is one thing called as, we have in Sanskrit, we have two words, what is called as Tathya and what is called as Satya. It may not be Tathya, Tathya means physically may not be possible, but Satya, it is true. True in such a way that you become greedy. When you become greedy, naturally that whatever that you touch becomes gold, and you are so greedy, but in the process what happens is that your own daughter will become gold, and people would not come to you anymore. They would run away from you, because the moment that you touch them, they will become gold. It's a very beautiful story, and it really communicates us very important idea that don't get caught up in the greed. Material is necessary, wealth is necessary, but then wealth is not necessary for the, you should not mount your greed on the wealth. Like that about various aspects that are there, stories. I just conveyed only one story. Similarly, in Casablanca, that we have a story where the ship was burning, but then he was standing there because that he has promised his father that he is going to be there. What a beautiful idea that somebody gives up his life for the sake of standing for the promise. Whether the story is real or not, let's not even worry about it. That's why we have this word called as the Tathya or Satya. Satya is correct, but then Tathya is not right. Satya may not be there. So we have to get the guidance from such stories, such incidents, such ideas. So that's why all these stories are there in Yoga Vasistha to convey us the message. And the message has to transform us. So far we have seen various stories, whether it is the story of Gandhi or whether the story of, various other Shivi Chakravarti, etc., which comes in the Puranas. They're all basically to communicate the story, the moral behind it, the idea behind it, what can be applied in one's own personal development. That's why there is one particular knowledge which is supposed to be secular knowledge about the world outside. There is another knowledge, and that secular knowledge does not transform you. It just stays with you. You embellish with that particular knowledge. But another knowledge is that which transforms you, which makes you a different personality. This is what is the focus of Yoga Vasistha stories that are there. And that's what is the focus of all our Indian culture. The stories that are there behind our Indian culture is to see that how we can improve our personality, our own inner being. And that's what is the idea that we're given. The whole idea of Patanjali also, you can see that the practices is given in the form of yoga. First of all, in the first chapter, he gives that these are all the states that are available in the mind. They are there in the mind. They are within us. And then we have that experience here and there, but we did not pay attention to that. We did not know about that we have those experiences. But then when Patanjali has given us, and when we try to look into our own experiences of day-to-day life, we see that they are definitely there as part of our mind. Glimpses of that is there here and there. But then after that, he gives us the sadhana. The sadhana is not to get this state, but sadhana is to see that whatever that makes us, covers this, clouds this particular states of mind that is there, just to remove that we have all this sadhana, and that Patanjali has given us the Samadhi Pada followed by the Sadhana Pada. After that, he also gives us what is called as the Vibhuti Pada, where the creation laws has also coming from that particular inner states of mind, and that he enumerates. But then he also cautions us that these are the things which can be traps. Therefore, you need to free yourself from those things so that you can go to the fourth state, fourth chapter. That's what is the Kaivalya Pada. If you did not go for the Kaivalya Pada, you have not understood Patanjali clearly, the direction which Patanjali has given us. So therefore, that these are the things which are really very important for us. And all these stories that are there, let's not look into history or geographical details and who comes first, who comes later, whether it happened really or not. All those things, let's not work into that. But very important thing is what is the message that these stories convey us. And we have seen last time a number of shlokas that are coming from Bhagavad Gita are actually bodily taken from Bhagavad Gita to Yoga Vasistha when he is discussing about Krishna's message to Arjuna. And that's an extraordinary, wonderful message. And therefore, that there is so much of parallel between the Yoga Vasistha and then Bhagavad Gita. Both the things are for the purpose of preparing. In one case, it is the Arjuna for the war. In the other case, it is Rama for taking up this whole life journey that he is going to be as a life mission that he has taken up. For that, what one requires is the spiritual inner growth. And that spiritual inner growth is given by this text. Now these, therefore, this Yoga Vasistha, Bhagavad Gita are connected texts like Upanishads. These are all the things which are supposed to be extraordinary texts. These are raising from the human being from ordinary level of what is good and bad, right and wrong, moral, immoral kind of a thing to a spiritual level. So therefore, that it's only the Indian literature, our Sanatana Dharma has thought about this particular aspect of it where we are going towards that spiritual journey, spiritual. This kind of a thing is not available in the other spiritual texts anywhere in the world, whether it is in the Talmud or the Bible or Quran that you see. Of course, you try to take a magnifying glass and try to look into the Quran, you do not find that kind of a thing which can really give you a spiritual growth and development in Muhammad's life. I don't know, let us leave it that way because that's not our subject discussion about that. But what we really require is the experience. And another thing is that this kind of an experience is there. We get into this experience of divinity within us, which Swami Vivekananda said at the Parliament of World Religions, that we are potentially divine. And that divinity, what he said, statement, it is so true, so real. And only thing is that we have not directly come in contact, experience with that. Once in a while we get that experience. Like for example, Rishi in Ishavasya Upanishad has that experience. That's why he opens up the discussion of Ishavasya Upanishad saying that Ishavasya midam sarvam yat kincha jagatyam jagat. Everything is nothing but God. So that means to say he has that God experience as a part of his experience that is there. Similarly, in Taittiriya Upanishad, when he says how, ahamannam, or similarly, Purnamadaha, Purnamadam, when Upanishad says, that means basically he is experiencing it and he is conveying that kind of thing. Not only that, in fact, I have come across, there was one person who was there in our, one of the workers with our Vivekananda Kendra, and then he had to undergo some surgery and then he was given an anesthesia, and probably the dose of anesthesia was a little more than what was required, probably something like that. So therefore when he got up from that coma state, that he was still under the influence of the drug that was there. For a lifelong that he has been nurturing the idea of God and godliness and this and that, all kinds of things. Naturally, being in the spiritual circles, that was what was going on. Moment he came out of it, he's still under the influence of drug. He says that, look, I have direct experience of God. I've seen God. I've been with God. God was with me. All that he was saying, very clearly, very emphatically, as if that was his personal direct experience. Everybody knows very clearly that there were so many things which were vasanas which he has to overcome. But for that moment, when the drug was given, that he was under the influence of that, he was in that state of freedom from those vasanas. And this kind of an experience that he had, very clearly that he was sharing with us. And many times, many people said that this kind of an experience people had it. That's one of the reasons why that we have this idea of drugs giving us that kind of an experience, or the various mushrooms giving that experience. And this has been recorded in our scriptures, and also people are there who go through that experience. But we know that one very clearly that they all say that's only for the sake of getting that experience, glimpse of that experience, but really that you need to do the sadhana, that to remove that your vasana kshaya and then chitta nasha, that these are the things that has to happen. Again and again, repeatedly, our people said that. Similarly, like that, in the case of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa also, that we have such a beautiful experience, a story, so incident that happened. Hriday, who was Ramakrishna's nephew, was there with him all the time, along with all the other people that disciples used to come. He was also there with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And then Ramakrishna would go into trance, just standing like that very naturally. And then others also would sit down meditation, and then they would experience that kind of meditation stages, samadhi states, so that they would be talking about it, and this was a common point of discussion that was going on. And so he always used to feel that, look, I'm so close to you, but then you did not give me that experience. You gave all the others the samadhi experiences. Ramakrishna always used to say to Hriday that, look, it's not that I give these experiences, it is the Divine Mother gives that experience whenever the time is ready. When time is ready, then you also get that experience. But then he always used to pester Thakur, saying that, Thakur, you should give me. When will you give me that samadhi experience? It so happened that one time, that in the evening, night, Ramakrishna got up and then was going for nature call, and then Hriday was going with him with the lantern in his hand. Everywhere it was dark. Only thing is that Hriday was there with the lantern and Ramakrishna was walking. Very hazy picture. Suddenly, that they found out that Hriday found out that they were floating in the air, they were flying in the sky, walking in the sky, and then looked around that they were become like lights themselves. They were like suns, bright. And then down below they could see the Calcutta, you could see the earth, and that's what Hriday had an experience. The moment that he had that experience, he was so excited. At once he shouted, "Hey Ramakrishna, hey Ramakrishna, look at this. Don't you see that we have become gods? We have become gods. We are flying in the sky. Let's go to Calcutta, tell people that we are gods." When he said like that, Thakur just turned to him and just shouted, "Stop this nonsense." When Thakur said like that, everything really just dropped, fell down. And then suddenly, Hriday found that he was having the lantern in his hand, and then it was dark around. Thakur replies him saying that, look, one small little glimpse of experience that you had, and then you forgot. You became so arrogant that you forgot to call me as Thakur. You started calling me by name Ramakrishna, and you also addressed me, "Hey Ramakrishna." What happened to you? See how arrogant you became. You don't deserve it. That's how essentially that when you deserve that, you get into that. So naturally what happens is that as long as that your chitta is caught up in the world activities outside, then you will not have that experience of spirituality within. So that is the reason why that this inner growth, inner development is something which is very important. It's not that experience that you have. There are several people who had that experience. It's not that they did not do the sadhana, but they had done the sadhana in the previous life, and that sadhana accumulated, and in this life that they are born with that kind of an experience. But then they don't lose their balance, they lose their chitta. They are very peaceful. And we have such examples of Sadashiva Brahmendra. He was in that stage where the whole story goes that that he was just walking, and then he did not have any kind of body consciousness at all. He was himself completely identified himself with that consciousness, with the bliss personality of him, Chetana and nothing else. And then he was just walking as if Chetana is walking in this particular body. The body was not there. And then somehow the doors were open and gatekeepers were not vigilant, and he just walked through that. And then finally he went to a harem where he's supposed to be all these women used to be there in the king's place, and then he landed up himself there. And then when they saw, and a harem is a place where no man is allowed to come inside, and suddenly this man has gone there. So this security fellow, that when he noticed that, he was really angry. He just and I think it is the king who got this message, and then immediately he shouted at him and asked him to get out. And then in the process that he took out his sword and chopped his hand. And this man, Sadashiva Brahmendra, was just walking like that, as if nothing has happened to him. That really sent shudders in the spine of the Nawab. He said, what happened to you? I cut off your head. And then Sadapin Brahmendra looked at the hand, picked up that hand and then put it along. And then it just got implanted on his body, and then he just walked in. And the whole king and everybody falls at his feet and recognized that how great he was, extraordinary. So he did not have that body consciousness, he was himself the consciousness that was there. That was something right from the beginning. And we have such examples, historically also, that chronically, that we have Ashtavakra is supposed to have that kind of an experience. And then, so these are the people who have that experience because they carried their sadhana from the previous life. Now, what is that sadhana? Ultimately, sadhana is that within you that you need to do it. And that's what he gives us in 3-4 different ways that Yoga Vasistha gives us. On the page 184, he says that it is the chitta samadhanam. And chitta samadhanam, that means to say the peaceful state of mind. Samadhana is that it is like the still water that is there. There is no movement of the ripples in the water. Your chitta is vibrant, very clear, but at the same time there is no kind of waves in the chitta. And this is what is that chitta samadhanam. He gives us the whole concept of chitta samadhanam. There are almost like 10 shlokas in page 183, and that is, he calls it as Kevali Bhava, the Bhava of one with the self. And the self also is something which does not have any ripples in it. It's very peaceful, quiet. That's what is a chitta samadhanam. The second thing he gives us, 192 page, he gives us the second expression which is called as chitta prashamanam. That means to say that you are involved in the activity, your chitta gets into the activity, but then once the chitta gets into the activity, that you should have, you also have conscious ability to see that you can immediately bring it to the quiet state, like the way that the balance comes to the still. It's like the way tightrope walking. And when somebody does the tightrope walking, actually his feet should be absolutely free from the tightness on the rope. It should be very free on the rope, and only when it is free, then he can make a balance. So that balance is made out of very clear awareness. So prashamana, it is peaceful state of mind with the help of awareness that we need to do it. Otherwise, what happens is in the sleep state, mind is quiet, apparently quiet, prashamana, because everything went into the seedal form. So therefore, that you do not have any activity of the mind. So it looks to be prashamana, but that prashamana, that quiet state of mind, is not the true quiet state of mind. It is just mind has gone to the whole mind has gone into the shell, and then you are away from that, therefore basically that you are quiet. So this chitta prashamana, mind goes into the seed form. So therefore, when a seed form it is not there, this chitta prashamana, he gives us 2 different kind of seeds. In the page 192 and then further development, gives us 2 different kind of seeds that are there. One is called as prana parispandana. Chitta and prana, I always say that these are the 2 different aspects within us. If you look into yourself, there are 2 types of activities that are going on. One activity is something which is an energy which is directed outside and which is called as pranic activity. Another is an activity which is turned inwards, and which is what is chitta activity. So chitta activity and the prana activity, these 2 things are going on. Now what has to happen is that the seed is having these 2 different aspects of it. One aspect is the prana and the other is chitta aspect of it. So in fact, that is what you can see, that when a person is peacefully sleeping, not only a person, You can see even the animals, dog, peacefully sleeping, looks to be peacefully sleeping. But suddenly you see that dog will have suddenly a kind of a shock, a kind of crying in the middle of the night. That means we always say that the dog has a very bad dream. Where is that dream coming from? And then you can see that its influence on the dog, that the heart palpitations will increase and then restlessness will be there. So the same thing will happen within us. So prana parispandana. So we need to see that prashamana has to happen even in the prana parispandana, and that's what is the on-seed form. Another is the dhrida bhavana. That means to say you are very steady within you. Your activity that you have taken up is in the dhrida bhavana. If you closely watch yourself, that many times the activity that you do it, one part of the mind is really doing the activity, but then other part of the mind is opposing that activity or not agreeing with that activity, not fully with that activity. You are not 100% with the activity. We used to have a meeting where one of the persons was there, very senior, sit in the meeting and then discuss, and then we do this, 1, 2, 3, 4. All those things we agree upon. And after finishing all that, now, okay, let's go for the activity, the portion of it. And then after finishing all that meeting, we sit in the car, and then this person sitting next to me says, Raghuram ji, ye sab hone wala hai kya? Does it happen? And that means to say a part of his mind is opposing whatever that we say. I said, if they are not supposed to happen, then we'll discuss about it. We'll see that this will not happen. One way or the other. I'm okay with that. Whether it happens, it doesn't happen, I'm okay with that. What happens, we will do it. But then every time in the meeting that he would say everything that is good, but the moment we came out of it, then he would always say, does it happen? So that means to say his own mind is rejecting it. Then later on I found out that it's a habit for him to keep saying like that, thinking like that. Such a person who cannot have dhrida bhavana. Dhrida bhavana is a very steady activity, very steady focus on the activity that you do it. Manasa, vacha, karmana, you are behind it. So first thing is prana parispandana. The second thing is dhrida bhavana. These are the two things that we need to have. Then the third is that first thing is chitta samadhanam, second is chitta prasadanam, and third is in the chitta there is what is called as atma bhavana. Now before that, this mano nasha trayam he brings about it. That means to say there are three types of mano nasha, and then now three aspects that are there which are contributory towards mano nasha, and that's what he brings about, the idea called as vasana nasha. As long as that there is vasana, that means to say your desires, and vasanas are deep-rooted desires. Deep-rooted desires. And that deep-rooted desires is what we call it as the vasana. And then we don't have any desires. And the idea that desire means basically that I'm not complete and I have to fill myself with something from outside. Whereas whatever activity that you do should be coming from that fullness. Where is the question of desire? Then you just do an activity. And you fully do an activity, and that activity, what you do, becomes like a celebration. So therefore, what happens is that vasana nasha is an indication that every activity that you do, it's like the fullness being expressed in the form of an activity. Like for example, a bud is an expression of fullness overflowing from the plant. And the flower is, if you actually watch the bud becoming a flower, and then you can see that actually the bud is overflowing its inner flower that is there within him and spreads outside, and much more easily that you can appreciate that kind of overflowing. The moment flower flowers, it spreads the fragrance everywhere, and everywhere that it just goes on with that fragrance, invites everybody, everything. So that means to say that every activity is like overflowing from that Purnatva. When that Purnatva can be possible is when there is no question of Vasana within us. There is nothing that you desire for, deeply desire for. That's what is the idea. The second thing is, it should be possible because of the knowledge that you gain. That's what is Tattva Samprapte. First one is the Vasana Nasha, second thing is Tattva Samprapte. And then this is the second one that we need to do. So that what happens is that we have the knowledge behind it, we have the idea about it. We don't do the activity just sporadically. We do the activity with, when you involve in the world outside, you respect the world, you give proper consideration for the world laws and all those things. That's what is the second thing that you do it. And third is the Manonasha. And the third one is the Manonasha. That means to say that at the end of the day that you have nothing that is harping in your mind, that's bothering your mind. You are free from that. You are a clean slate. And this is what, when all these three things happen, then naturally what happens is chitta, atma bhavana. Now this chitta, as Patanjali puts it, that vritti takes us outside and atma sthiti is there, swarupa is there deep inside. And now this chitta, it involves in the world outside, but at the same time, it goes and rests in the atma bhavana, the feeling of atma sthiti, and that's what is the atma bhavana that is there. This atma bhavana has these four different kind of manifestations, as the page 240 gives us the idea of how it can be done. One is called as the atma bhavana, is the form of jnatrutva, and second thing is kartrutva, and third is the bhoktrutva, and the last one is the sakshi. First three, jnatrutva, kartrutva, bhoktrutva, are the modifications of this atma tattva in order to involve in the world outside. Jnatrutva is identification. Yes, we are identified. As consciousness, we have no identification at all, but the moment that the first modification of the consciousness is in the form of identification. I am a human being, and the other animals are there, and also this is one identification. And there also that we have species identification, but that identification of masculine or feminine, and further identification that I am the father, I am the mother. So like that there are various identification that we work with that. This is jnatrutva, that means to say identification in the world outside, and therefore that you perform in the world outside. It's very important, very necessary for us, and we create that atma sthiti. Atma means basically me. I have become this, I have accepted this, therefore that I become this jnatrutva. Interestingly, I recollect one aspect of it. One of our teachers, great teachers, he was Professor Shastri, my own brother-in-law. So I would always meet him like a brother-in-law meeting brother-in-law. So therefore, it was like a family connection. My sister was there. I go to their house, so naturally she feeds me with a nice, wonderful food, whatever it is. And then we discuss about Vedanta philosophy. But then I said that, look, if I come here like a brother-in-law, I'm not becoming his student. I have to adapt the posture of a student. When can I adapt? When he becomes a teacher. But here when we are sitting and discussing, he becomes my brother-in-law, he will not become like a teacher. And that doesn't allow me to actually learn from him as a student. So therefore when that idea came, I tried to investigate where does he go to teach Vedanta. Then I found out that Kanyakumari. He goes there for life workers training and then gives a series of talks on Upanishad. I said, that's one place where I have to learn to listen to him, the Upanishad, as a student. So I approached the authorities there, and then they embraced me. They said, you can come, you can stay as long as that you would like to. So I went there and I was sitting in the class. Then he came and he saw me in the class. He was surprised. He said, Raghu, you are here? I said, I'm not here like your brother-in-law, but I'm here like your student. See, that means to say that jnatritva, identification, you have to be like a student, then your knowledge flows into you. So this jnatritva is something that the Atma takes up the form of jnatritva. Similarly, second thing is kartrutva. That means I have to do. I have to walk means I have to walk. I have to gain an experience of doing something. I have to do so that I can gain the experience. Kartrutva. And third is the bhoktrutva. That means I experience. The bhoktrutva is something which takes all the way right up to the level that I am the Atma Sthiti. And that's what is something which I experience that. And the last one is Sakshi. Sakshi is where you withdraw from the world outside. All the activities are going on, but then you are away from all those things. You are not touched by that. You are just an observer behind it. This is a very beautiful concept that Indian philosophy says, that you are a Sakshi. You become somebody who is behind the eyes. And you are somebody doing all kinds of activity going on, but you are not involved in the activity. You are somebody there behind it. This is an extraordinary, wonderful thing. And that Sakshi is something which can become the Atma Sthiti. So, the whole idea is therefore to see that how we can become ourselves the Sakshi. Kartrutva, Jnatrutva, Bhoktrutva, we realize the doer, experiencer, and also the identifier, that it is our choice that we become that. Like for example, my parents, I became a child. Yes, by consciously, by my own choice that I became their child. What a wonderful feeling that you have. By choice that I became somebody's student. By choice I became somebody's wife, somebody's husband, somebody's brother. Everything is my choice, that this identification with that. I do the activity, but at the same time that I also experience whatever that is there. Truly, I remove all kinds of factors which are trying to influence my experience, put all those things aside and try to experience with very clear mind, with clear idea that I experience. When I said something it is hot for me. It need not be compared with the others. We cannot say that somebody else says it is not hot, therefore it is not hot for me. Nothing. Your experience is absolutely, totally your own experience. So therefore, these three different aspects of it, doer, identifier, and the experiencer. But behind all those things, there is one more thing that is supposed to be Sakshi. That means he is just observer. This is what in Upanishad there is a very beautiful story, that there is a bird which is trying to fight with the piece of meat, and the other birds are chasing and this and that. And you are involved in that, and suddenly the bird realizes and then leaves all those things and sits on the top of the tree, top branch, and then watches the whole thing and the whole lila, the activity that's going on down below. You should be identifying yourself with that particular Sakshi, looking at this whole world as a lila. When you look at this world as a lila, it does not mean that you do not involve in the activity, but then you get into the activity as Kartrutva, Bhoktrutva, Jnatrutva, but you yourself stationed at the lila, and that's what is Atma Bhava. So ultimately what happens is that Atma Bhava, that you establish yourself in. This is a beautiful journey that we make about the inward journey that we do it. If there is no inward journey, there is no question of spiritual learning at all. If there is no inward journey, there is no question of satsang at all. If there is no inward journey, there is no question of any religion, any prophet, any saint, any of these things do not exist at all if you do not make that inward journey. Unfortunately, that other religions, other faiths, other beliefs do not emphasize so much about this inward journey as much as the Indian philosophy puts it. So let's carry this message to the world around. I'll stop it here at this time. Let's continue the discussion next week, again at 4:30 on Tuesday. Let's continue with the Yoga Vasistha Satsang. Hopefully that my health will be much better at that time. I would have improved and things look to be positive. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you so much. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.